welcome to episode 114 of Super Deformed GamesCast. Thank you for joining us today, this Thursday. It's a holiday week, short week, but we appreciate people coming by to hang out. Today we've got a full cast and crew with two guests. We've got Amanda.
Hello.
Hi, and then we've of course got Matt from MPD here with us as well.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, thanks for being with us, guys. And as usual, we've got the full crew. Well, not the full crew, but a lot of us here with John, Matt, Brandon, and Jay. Hey, guys.
It is a relief to not be hosting tonight. I got to tell you that much. There's no pressure on me anymore. None of you assholes can say, John, the audio's messed up, or John, the video. Actually, that's probably still my fault because I'm running it.
You're still hosting, yeah.
I'm still running it, but I'm not hosting it anymore. At least not tonight. So, Zach, if you fuck this up, it's all on you.
Right, yeah, I just have this knot in my stomach for our 8 watchers. Yeah. But yeah, so we've got some topics tonight, but I think the first thing we want to do is jump into Matt's specialty, the NPD stuff for the last month.
The numbers.
Ready to talk the
numbers.
Sales. Let's go.
What do they mean, Matt?
I don't know what they mean, and we'll never find out because Black Ops 4 doesn't have a campaign. So I guess the numbers will continue to be a mystery. Yeah, hey, I don't know if you guys heard the God of War. The God of War did pretty good. I don't know, had you heard?
What's God of War?
I have no idea. Do you mean Gears of War?
Small indie game, Gears of War.
No, it's a single player game, which is kind of weird with a story. There's a kid. I don't know.
Bullshit. Those are
It
dead.
did well.
Single player games
Yeah,
are
so
dead.
God of War broke all kinds of records last month. It became the best-selling PlayStation exclusive in the launch month ever.
That's fucking insane.
So yeah, so previously it was Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, so it taking the biggest
Really?
exclusive ever from a San Andreas game is a hell of an accomplishment.
That is nuts.
Yeah, PlayStation 4 sold the highest dollar sales in full game sales for a month of April in history for any platform, which was a really big get. And the PS4 hardware set records, highest level of dollar and unit sales for a hardware platform since April of 2009. So Sony really killed it in the month, and God of War really led the way.
So Matt, I got a question for you, man. So we're talking, and I probably already know the answer, but we're talking dollar sales, not like unit sales anymore, right? Like when we talk about games, we're talking revenue, not actual units sold.
Right. So in dollar sales,
okay,
right?
Gotcha.
In unit sales, it didn't hit the highest sales ever for an exclusive, but in dollar sales, it did. You have like $50 pricing in PS2 era. You've got like the bigger editions now, so
that's
not
still
quite
insane.
apples.
So does that include things like the God of War Special Edition consoles and that sort of thing?
No, so all of the sales of the game with hardware actually go to the hardware sales number.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that
okay.
is impressive. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, if you took out the number of units that sold there and allocated $60 a unit over to the software, it'd be even more impressive.
Right.
Yeah, so anyway you look at it, God of War did an amazing job. Now the question is, of course, does that mean that the whole narrative around single-player games are dead or single-player games are going away? Is that still true? Is that not true? How does this impact all of that? And I don't know. I don't know what your guys' take is, but my take is that, a mid-90s rated game, no matter if it's single-player or multiplayer, is generally going to do pretty good. I don't know if this says a lot about the whole single-player versus multiplayer thing, but I'd be really interested in hearing your take on what you see the success of God of War, how that relates to the rest of the market, and is this an indicator that there's this huge latent market there sitting there for single player games, or is this more of it's a mid 90s rated game, and of course it does well because that's what mid 90s rated games do?
I mean, I think the writing's on the wall. I mean, Uncharted 4. I mean, you think about the Uncharted series, right? Like, Uncharted is a Sony staple. Like, even more than God of War, at least until now, anyway. I would say that Uncharted, since the beginning of the PlayStation 3 era, has been their flagship series, And Uncharted always sells well, but it's never sold like this. I mean, not like right out the gate like this. Uncharted 4 didn't do that. No other Sony exclusive this generation has done that.
I believe that God of War ended up doubling the sales that Uncharted did right out of the gate.
Wild.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, which is nuts. Like
How are the sales comparing to God of War 3?
I haven't looked into that actually.
Matt, yeah.
Significantly higher.
Yeah.
I think people are pretty tired of God of War by the time God of War 3 came out.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
So
I've been saying it for years.
Exactly, and which is why I think that if we had gotten just another God of War 4 with Kratos as like, Zeus, like another one of those games,
it would have sold well, but
it would have sold fine, but it wouldn't have sold like it is now.
Yeah, so what you can do is since you have a history of God of War, right? We have a number of games, including Ascension. So we have games covering basically the entire spectrum of game ranking scores. You plot those out, right? And your game ranking score and your sales will basically form a normalized curve to an extent, a little bit off of that curve. The new God of War sales are significantly higher than a similarly rated game would have been using the old God of War benchmarks, if that makes sense. So really,
interesting.
This game is overperforming the historical benchmark of God of War. So I think it's
By
a combination. Well, a fairly significant amount. I wish I could say like specific numbers. I can't, but enough to be very noticeable and significant. So I think it's a combination of not only a mid-90s game, but a reimagining of God of War, a modernization, and jumping away. I think directly led to this huge sales increase from day one.
So Matt, I think a couple podcasts ago we all sat down and talked about. I don't know if you were on that week's episode. We were talking about lifetime sales. What we were thinking. Do you still think this game will have substantial legs through the summer, or do you think the vast majority of people who are going to pick it up probably already did?
Yeah, so we're seeing a very big divergence here, right? So the single player games, especially the campaign focused games, are more heavily front loaded than they've been historically, while the service games, the Rainbow Six Sieges, the GTAs of the world, they're much more back weighted on their sales curve than ever before. So we really have this total spreading. Now the question is, right, we haven't had a 94 rated triple or quadruple A game like this in some time. So the question is open of what does this mean? So before the game launched, I tweeted out that this game will set the benchmark for single player games. It'll really set the high bar that everyone else is going to go after. And it absolutely did that. Sales like this and quality scores like this are not easy, and they're very rare. So now we know what the top end of a single player game sales wise might look like, but we don't know what the sales curve looks like, and I think that's what we're going to find out here in the coming weeks and months.
Well, and I also think it's very clear evidence of gamers being compelled by really nuanced characters, because that's what Kratos is now. And I'm living in a 2018 where I fucking say that Kratos of all characters is a nuanced character. I mean, what they did with his character in God of War is unbelievable. I was blown away by the game. I gotta say, I didn't expect it to sell as well as it has been, score or not, because I was kind of in that mindset that we're in the Fortnite generation now. Where
you have a game that you play as opposed to you play games.
Exactly.
Room for both.
Amanda, that's a perfect way of saying it. Is you've got games like Fortnite, which are drawing in people that otherwise don't play games, have no interest in games. And that's their hobby now is Fortnite. But I think, and Matt, I pose the question to you: do you think this is indicative of just the health of single player games or the health of the industry as a whole? Because I kind of separate those people who just play games like Fortnite and PUBG and nothing else, apart from those people who, like Amanda very astutely said, play games, not just one game. I think it's a really interesting way of putting it.
Yeah, there's a lot there, and when you tack on how streaming comes into play and how that impacts people's decision-making process, I mean, it gets really nuanced and very complicated, right? I think God of War tells us that if you make a 94 plus rated video game, no matter what kind of game it is, you have the potential to sell a whole bunch of it. I don't know if God of War had come out and been an 84 rated game or an 80 rated game. I don't think we'd be sitting here talking about it. It would probably come somewhere in the lower half of the top 10. and of course it'd be doom and gloom all the way around. But because of the incredible job Santa Monica Studios did, it's up there. So I think it's more a question of we have more choice than ever in video games. There are more ways people can play games. Like you guys were talking about, the big games take an overwhelming share of voice and attention. But if you can break out of that clutter with a truly great video game backed by a great marketing campaign, backed by a great executional program, including your operations and sales support, that you can do pretty well. But that is, of course, a very difficult thing to do.
You know what I thought was also interesting about the NPDs, Matt, was not just the performance of God of War, but the performance of games like Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on Switch, which was tethered to a console that was basically an anchor. And I played it for the first time, Amanda, on my Switch, and I know.
So
and Brandon was one of the people who had told me. Brandon and Jeff actually both.
Was that
It was a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
No,
it's
I
a good
mean
game.
the Wii U version.
Oh, the original one was like
Oh
2014.
god, ages ago.
2014.
Yeah, I played the
Yeah.
Wii version at launch forever.
Yeah, so did
Yeah,
I.
and
I've,
both Brandon
I'm
and
saying
Jeff
how
had
good
told
it
me
was,
this is
too.
one of the greatest platformers of all time, and
It is
so
amazing.
I've got 2 playthroughs under my belt at almost 30 hours, according to my Switch. I'm fucking in love with this game, and the game. It's so like it was tethered to a console that almost nobody owned, and it didn't even crack the top 10. I looked, it didn't even crack the top 10 in the NPDs when it launched. This time around, at $60, it was a $60 game, right? It was a $60 game this time around,
Yep.
as opposed to the 40 it was on the Wii U, and it was what, number 4 or 5, Matt, for the month, something like that.
Yeah, number 5, and we don't even track digital on Nintendo
That's
yet. So
unbelievable.
you tack on some percentage of sales for digital sell-through, and the picture gets even better.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you look down the list, right? You got Tropical Freeze at 5, Mario Kart 8 at 6, Odyssey at 9. Zelda came in. Where'd Zelda come in? At 13,
Jeez.
right? Not even including digital. So it shows a
That's
couple
wild.
things. Yeah, one is Nintendo still makes video games that sell really well.
Yep.
It also
That
shows
marketing
that.
though.
Yeah, it also shows that great games can sell for a very long time, and they can sell across generations. But we kind of knew that already. And I think a little bit it also shows that Nintendo is doing its own thing, and that the Switch world and the Xbox PS4 world are basically separated at this point, and aren't really in direct competition. But you can go down all kinds of rabbit holes when it comes to that.
Well, and what's interesting to me is that people are and I too have gotten snarky about what we call the Switch tax, right? Like everybody, like every game on the Switch is like, $10 more than the other versions. Amanda, go ahead.
But the physical versions, there is a reason for that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's because the carts are more expensive.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike.com, my old website, we ran an excellent feature about the reason why the carts are more expensive. So if you want to go check that out, my one of the other editors, his name's Jason. He wrote that piece. He's fantastic. He researched the hell out of that piece, and I loved it so much that I just edited it forever.
I'm sure
It was one of my
it costs
favorite
more to
pieces.
make too because they taste really bad.
They do taste.
I finally tasted one last week and it was
Oh
bad.
my god, my
I told-
husband keeps trying. He's like, just taste it, just like once. No, I don't. Why are you doing this? So yeah, there is a reason why it's more expensive to buy the physical Switch games.
Okay, so-
but there's very little reason as to why it's more expensive to buy in terms of like if it's a port, like I don't know. Matt, back me up, man. Like, what's going on here?
Well, I mean, the reason they can charge that much is because people will pay it. And even
It's
if
true,
the
I really
carts,
do.
even if the carts weren't that expensive, the $60 price point was probably going to happen anyway. And
Yeah.
I'm honestly still a little surprised that we haven't broken into some $70 base games yet. I mean, it has to come eventually. I think what's happening now is that companies are putting out multiple versions of a game at launch. You get like the base version, the silver version, the gold version, the platinum version, all with different amounts of pack-ins, which are basically just
Totally.
yeah, right. And so they're justifying the higher price that way. And so actually, launch average selling prices are higher than $60 on average. So yeah, so there's the cost
fascinating.
factor. The cost factor absolutely plays into it. but ultimately you're trying to gauge at what point you can maximize your demand, your highest price point for the highest possible unit sales to get to your highest possible revenues. Hopefully without picking off too many people, but video games, if people want to game enough, they'll pay whatever price they have to pay.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Probably
See,
fair. Yeah.
Amanda, that's the thing, right? Like when you think NPD numbers, you're like, oh, I don't want to talk about numbers, but it's fucking interesting as shit.
Dude, I talk about the business of making games now.
like,
That is like the thing I talk about now.
This is the stuff
I'm-
I love. Like,
I'm
this
still
is-
surprised. I'm still surprised that Yakuza 6 sold more than fucking Sea of Thieves.
So
That, you know what?
Yeah.
That
Well.
doesn't surprise me.
yeah,
That doesn't surprise
doesn't
me even
surprise
a little.
me
I
either.
mean, and this is kind of
Yeah,
what
like-
this is kind of what Matt kind of touched on, right? Is that these games that have content have the potential to have legs, but Sea of Thieves is the opposite, which is like a game that was built to have legs but doesn't have the content to keep its
Yeah.
And like
its
everyone,
going up,
and,
right?
and it just seems like everyone's like dropped it at this point. I don't know.
Right.
It's
I
too
have.
bad because it had a ton of potential, especially when it was announced.
Yeah.
Yep.
like-
But
I heard the new limited mode is okay. They've got some new limited mode out that launched yesterday or
What was
maybe
it?
2 days ago called
What-
The Hungering
The
Deep.
Hungering Deep, right?
And I think it's a limited time quest, and I think it adds a fourth mission structure. I haven't gotten a
Okay.
chance to dip into it yet, but
Right.
it's limited time, right? So that doesn't necessarily solve the content.
Wait,
problems we've seen
hold
with
on,
that game.
hold on a minute, back up. It's limited. The Hungering Deep is limited time.
It is a limited time special event
Okay.
currently.
so it's kind of like Monster Hunter in that regard.
Yeah,
Damn quests.
I would be concerned if I were a Sea of Thieves fans, however few that might be. I would be concerned if you don't hear more concrete things about the future of that game at E3.
Okay.
Hey,
But yeah,
That is a game
We'll
that
have
does
to
not.
see during the Xbox
yep.
showcase.
So-
Yeah.
Sure.
So speaking of Xbox and Sea of Thieves, Matt, like I mean, Xbox is doing fine. You know, like it's selling
great.
well. It's doing
Yeah.
They
like
are.
it's.
Yeah, it's doing far better than the conversation online would lead you to believe, including the
Yeah.
pretty massive year-on-year growth, particularly in Q1. Sea of Thieves is a really interesting test case, right? It's one of those games, we talked about it last time. It's like, okay, here's this brand new business model, this brand new way people are acquiring this game. In the first month, the sales of the game, like the actual sales, not the Game Pass game sales, but the actual sales, I think surprised a lot of people. And now we see it fall to the chart, down to the charts to number 18. It was number 3 last month. So you're like, okay, well, that's a pretty big drop. And is that a bad sign? Is that what does that really mean? And I don't know. But when I think back to Rainbow Six Siege, right, one of our favorite games we like to talk about, Rainbow Six Siege, which will sell forever. It launched very low in its December launch month. It fell off the charts January, February. It was basically out of the consciousness. And yet, look at it now, right? Rainbow Six Siege this month was 15, and it's over 2 years since launch, right?
And
So-
just over 30 million players they announced too.
What a
Right. So
comeback.
okay, so you look at the Sea of Thieves rankings, you go, well, that's not great, but compare it to what Siege started with, and you're like, okay, now they have a lot of room to make this right and to really build this up. Were they caught flat-footed? Did they launch too early? Maybe, we don't know. But man, if they really invest and put a lot of effort into this, there's plenty of time to make this a perennially good seller. We'll just have to see what they do. But yeah, E3 is going to be very telling for this.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. I think that a portion of this too is getting the right, and I don't generally like talking about influencers, but it is about influencers, and it's about getting the right people in front of the game and getting the right people talking about the game and promoting the game and everything like that. And you're not going to get that kind of support from the media because the media is moving on to, the other things that they need to report on. So
Yeah. Well, and
Right.
I also think that like Sea of Thieves, for example, I think Sea of Thieves when the No Man's Sky, I guess it's more of a fix than it is anything else. But when the additional content for No Man's Sky drops in July, and it hits Xbox, I think games like Sea of Thieves are in trouble.
I don't know. I think
we'll have to see.
yeah. I don't want to speculate on it too much. I think comparisons to Sea of Thieves and No Man's Sky are maybe a little knee jerk and maybe not that accurate.
Yeah.
But what I really want to get back to is one of the things that Jay brought up a minute ago, which is Yakuza. And Yakuza did have a really good sales month. And what I want to go and bounce off the group and Matt is two things. One, that game launched around the same time, maybe the same date as God of War in
Same
the
week.
US. same week, and so maybe that kind of knocked down its sales the first month, but it came back really, really hard this month. So Matt, do you want to kind of talk on that, or Jay?
Yeah, I just want to say I feel like with the Yakuza series, because the PlayStation 3 like Erudite series did not sell well at all. I mean, hell, the fifth one was a digital only release because it just wasn't. It didn't make sense for Sega to like publish or produce like physical copies in America, and I feel like just word of mouth has really like helped the Yakuza series. And I mean, I think Sega's shown its support for the series. I mean, we're getting Kiwami 2 in like August. And they just announced the 3, 4, and 5 remasters. I mean, who knows that they're coming over here?
That's
but like,
huge.
yeah, like I mean, like Sega's like showing like, hey, like we're starting to make a profit now. Like people are talking about this game. We're selling like a good amount of copies to like for this to be like a success. And like it's really cool. Like you're probably able to play like every Yakuza game on your PlayStation 4 in like the next 2 years, and that's like insane.
Super exciting.
It is. Like I have Yakuza Burnout's Point, like because I played Zero, Kiwami, and 6 like straight back to back. But I'm really happy for the series. So
Yeah, and keep in mind, right? So Yakuza, Jay made some great points. Yakuza is really becoming like it still is niche, right?
yeah,
or
it's definitely
niche,
still niche.
depending on where you live.
Yeah.
But far less so, and gaining incredible momentum. And just a reminder, right? So Sega is not part of our digital leader panels. This is just purely physical sales to get to number 17 on the chart. This is a game I would imagine has a very high digital share. I can't imagine the physical distribution was as wide and broad as like a God of War, right? So you can tack on some ranking spots for Yakuza if you adjusted for a digital extract. You do that, and yeah, Yakuza 6 had a hell of a debut, and I've fallen down the Yakuza rabbit hole myself. I've bought like 5 Yakuza games in my life, but I never played any of them. But now I'm in Yakuza 0, and I'm hooked, man. I'm all about it, baby. Let's go get some real estate. Let's do this.
Yeah. Those games are great because they're just like there's soap dramas of like fighting and like it's amazing and like you can get drunk in the game and like just go eat good food.
Yeah,
Like
sounds like my college years.
For me. Yeah, that's like a weekend for me, and like, I can just do that on a weekday in my room.
That's gonna be E3 for me, just so everyone's clear.
Amanda's gonna get in fights and get drunk, and she's gonna go
I have to exercise my Canadianness somewhere. Also, now I've merged with the Jersey people. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Ooh.
I'm like all hopped up on maple syrup and nonsense.
That needs to be. I'm gonna have somebody make you a Twitter banner with maple syrup and nonsense.
That's me.
And I'm gonna have you, and you need to put it on your Twitter profile.
I would do this.
That's fucking awesome.
So, and I think one of the things, and we definitely need to get into Pokemon here soon, but one of the things that we have heard is that Microsoft and Sega have been talking about games, and Phil Spencer, of course, it could just be Phil Spencer trying to talk to fans on Twitter like he likes to do, but he's talked about trying to reaffirm some relationships with Sega. We've seen in the past, Jay has told me about this, Yakuza has gone to other platforms. Jay, didn't at least one Yakuza title come to Wii U exclusively in Japan?
So originally there were remasters, well not remasters, but more like re-releases of 1 and 2. There was like a dual package pack in Japan only for the Wii U, and it sold like shit. If anyone's curious, I think
to be fair, it's also the Wii U.
Yeah, I think it sold like 2,000 copies its first week.
Oof. Well, and so I'm not saying that it's definitely happening Yakuza on other platforms, but it's not unprecedented. So we could see that game take off in different audiences too. Yeah. But I think we should probably not speculate on that, and instead let's jump into Pokemon.
Before we do that,
yeah.
So I asked Stephanie Tinsley, whose handle is @Agent Tinsley on Twitter, because she was all like, "Yo, if you have a show or whatever, hit me up for some codes to give away." And I was like, "Yo, I want a code."
Best.
Yeah, I was like, "Yo, I want a code," and she was like, "Oh, here's 4 PC codes for Minute, which is a game."
Yes.
So good.
Yes.
It is a game where you pretty much have a minute to accomplish your task, and if you don't, then you die.
That
and you have to
sounds
restart.
stressful.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
It's so good.
Yeah, and I will let Amanda talk on this a little bit, but Minute is a game I bought on a whim. And the 60-second thing, it sounds incredibly stressful, but the way the game is designed is that even in 60 seconds, you can make incremental progress. So the next time you do it, you get that much further, and you kind of progress at a really refreshing rate. It's so easy to play for 10 minutes at a time and put down. I really like Minute.
Cool.
Yeah, it's failing up. Really,
Yes.
that is the entirety of Minute in a nutshell. It is failing up a minute at a time.
So,
Yes.
so you could say this is the Dark Souls of 60-second games.
Nope, we're not
Damn
gonna say
it!
that. We're not gonna say that. So Jay,
You are the
Jay-
Dark Souls of people.
I would also like to point out this game is published by Devolver Digital, who
Devolver's
people-
amazing.
people really like. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, shout out to Devolver Digital and shout out to Stephanie for these codes.
So Jay, do you want to handle the giveaway, buddy?
Yeah, so okay,
Awesome.
so I have the first winner. His Twitter handle or their Twitter handle, because I don't want to, assume here, is Pint Full of Tokens. So shout out
Oh,
to
I know
you.
Pint Full of Tokens. All right.
Yeah, so you
Awesome.
got the first code. I'm gonna be taking screenshots of the winners, so I have, evidence, so I can hit you guys up after the show.
Yeah,
So-
sounds great. Just shoot them a DM and we'll
Yeah.
get that figured out. Awesome. All right, so we've got 3 more to give away later. Is that right?
right.
Awesome. So we'll stop in on that periodically. But first, let's jump into Pokemon. So I did not follow this update. Can somebody who followed this talk us through all the Pokemon news this week?
Oh my god, there was so much Pokemon news this week, you guys.
Tell us about it,
So
Amanda.
much Pokemon. I was trying to watch Westworld, and there was Pokemon. So yeah, I was trying to get caught up. So okay, so here's what happened with Pokemon this week. We knew that there was supposed to be some kind of announcement that was supposed to be coming from the Pokemon Company, and following some of the weird stuff that's been going on with Nintendo, we're like, who knows when that'll happen? We'll find out when they do, I guess. So they announced a couple days ago now that they have there's actually 4 new things to talk about with regards to Pokemon. There is the free-to-play Pokemon game called Pokemon Quest that is available right now on Nintendo Switch. That is a weird kind of free-to-start game where you run around and beat up other Pokemon and train your Pokemon up and sacrifice your Pokemon to one another, I think. And I haven't quite figured it out yet.
Most
'cause
people
it seems
see-
really crazy.
Most people seem to not like it, Amanda. Like that's.
It's not very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's not very good.
It's rough.
I mean, if you're gonna do a free-to-play game and you're gonna do it on the Switch, it better be damn good. Because
Well-
I'm not gonna spend my time playing a free-to-play game on my Switch when I could be playing like Darkest Dungeon.
Yeah,
So-
the mobile version's not coming out till late June, I think they said.
Till late
which,
June,
like,
yeah.
Why? I don't know why you wouldn't just like.
Launch
feel
with
like-
that.
Wait, the
Yeah, I
mobile
feel like
version's not even
mobile-
out?
Yeah, I
It's
feel
not
like
out,
mobile is
no.
where that
What?
belongs.
Yeah. Which is
Yeah,
weird.
it's not a great game. I played it the night that it came out just to get my eyes on it, just to see if it was something to talk about, but it's really not. So that's Pokemon Quest.
Damn.
There are 2 new Pokemon games that are coming out on November 16th called Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. They are essentially the same game. They're doing the same thing they always do, the same new mechanics that are kicking around in 2 different games with similar Pokemon except for 1, essentially. So, depending on whether or not you like Pikachu or Eevee, I'm secretly an Eevee person.
So
Not so secret anymore.
so Amanda,
But-
like I'm new to Pokemon, right? Like I am right now actually playing Ultra Moon, which is my first Pokemon game. I'm about
What
35
was your
hours in.
childhood, dude?
Well, yeah, I know, people are like, you're just now playing Pokemon.
That's okay.
I'm about 35 hours in. And so here's my question, Amanda, and because you seem like you know a lot more about Pokemon right now than I do. Everybody has been complaining about, they're making Pokemon casual, and I'm like, but isn't Pokemon casual to begin with? Like,
That label means
I mean,
nothing at this point.
I don't know what that
At
means
this point,
anymore.
it's just
So, yeah.
pejorative.
It's always been a very accessible series.
It has. And the interesting thing about Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee is that they are taking a lot of the mechanics that seem to be working for Pokemon Go, and they're pulling it into a core Pokemon experience, which they haven't done before. So people that have been playing Pokemon Go and just running around their neighborhoods and capturing Pokemon, maybe they've never played a Pokemon game before. Maybe they have never been interested in it because it looks kind of weird, and like, what do you even do in Pokemon? You just run around and capture Pokemon? Like, why wouldn't I just go outside and go capture Pokemon? So the integration and the ecosystem that they're creating with Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu is that marriage of, no, we still want you to go out and capture your Pokemon out in the real world, but we also want you to bring them into your experience on the Switch and see them in high definition on your television and interact with your pocket monsters like that.
I mean,
So
people have said visually it doesn't look good. I'm like, are we looking at the same game? Because this looks really good to me.
it's
Like,
gorgeous.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
so pretty. I don't understand people that don't like, they maybe they don't like the aesthetic, and that's the difference here. I love the aesthetic. I think it looks adorable. Pokemon has always been an exceptionally accessible franchise. It skews young on purpose. It's not about older gamers. It's about bringing younger gamers into it. My sons, my daughter, they love playing Pokemon.
I'm
You know,
really
my daughter's
enjoying
just
it.
learning how to
I
read.
loved it when
so
Pokemon Red came out when I was 13. Yeah,
that's a
I mean,
really
I'm
good
37.
I was
and
all about it.
I'm
I
really
watched the anime and everything.
See, I haven't seen any of the shows, but I'm 37 years old, and I'm actually really loving it. And it gives me something to talk about with my son, who's 10 years old and is a massive, huge Pokemon fan. And he's got his own Switch
Oh, he's
finally.
the same age as my eldest son.
Yeah, he's 10 years old. He's got his own Switch, and he's going to see the Pokemon trailer for the first time when he comes over on Friday. Which
Very
I'm
exciting.
very excited to show him that. So here's my question for Amanda and the group as a whole, right? So. And again, like coming into this is with Ultra Moon as my first Pokemon game. The one thing that sounds a little off to me is that apparently there's no wild Pokemon battles. Like you don't battle Pokemon in the wild anymore. I really like the wild Pokemon battles.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know how they're
walking
gonna
through the tall
deal.
grass.
I don't know how they're gonna deal with that. It looks like a lot of the battling is gonna be done in arenas and in gyms, and that's an interesting switch for. That's a really interesting switch, and
it's
that
on the
is
Switch.
how on the Switch.
I feel like every time you say
I
that,
didn't
you
even
gotta
do
make
that
the
on
little
purpose.
you gotta make the little switch noise. Anyway, please continue.
But I think that that's part of the mechanics that they're bringing in from Pokemon Go is that, you know, you're getting out there, you're playing with your friends, you're involving yourself in these neighborhood raids and arena battles and gym battles and shit like that, and it just like that's what they're bringing into the new Pokemon games. They're not making it casual per se. They're homogenizing, or rather they're making the experience between the mobile game and the core Pokemon game cohesive.
I actually think that the wild Pokemon stuff, like I think that's being a little overblown because really the only thing they're changing is you know how you whittle down their health and stuff and then
Yeah.
you throw the ball. Really the only thing they're changing is like you don't throw a Pokemon out anymore. You feed them berries, like it looks like you feed them berries like still in Go, and then you throw a ball like when the ring contracts. But the trainer battles are still
They're still the same.
they're still like they were in Yellow. Like trainers are in the exact same place
But are
as
they
they
gonna,
were in Yellow.
but here's my question: like when you eliminate Pokemon battles in the wild, like are they going to make trainer battles more prolific? Because I feel like people.
I would
like,
assume so.
Okay, because I really like battling my Pokemon. Like that's the hook for me is just fighting my pocket monsters, right? Because that's what Pokemon are. They're pocket monsters. But Zach, go ahead. No, go ahead, man.
No, so my quick question is, so I just want to make sure I know this before I go on. So Amanda, you said it comes out November 16?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Along with the Pokemon, like the new Pokeball controller as well.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
Yeah,
that thing looks
the
so
peripheral.
dope. I want one.
Yeah. So my question for Matt is, Matt, you mentioned in the past that you think Switch is going to have a huge year. I think anyone who disagrees is wrong. Do you think do you think November is pushing it? That's usually a little bit late in the game season. Obviously, Nintendo can kind of do what they want. They showed that last year. What do you think?
Yeah, they can't do what they want now. I was initially expecting a mainline Pokemon game this year, so this is a bit of a curveball, a little bit of a surprise, obviously, to everybody in terms of the strategy behind it. It's still a Pokemon game. It's still a Pokemon game in a market that is more Pokemon friendly than ever. When Sun and Moon launched a few years ago, it was the biggest Pokemon launch in history, in terms of dollar and unit sales, right? And we didn't even track digital. So far bigger than Red Green or Diamond Sapphire or any other launch in history. So, I mean, this is a very friendly market for Pokemon. So, I mean, I imagine that Switch are going to be hard to come by middle to late December. We'll see how that goes. It's going to be a very heavy November, December period for Switch and for gifting. But yeah, I think it's going to do very well. I'm not changing my outlook. So I've got 6.8 something million, 6.2 million units in my forecast for Switch in 2018 for the U.S.,
Ooh.
which is pretty darn high. Looking historically,
yeah, that's pretty high.
That's pretty high. It's I know I'm leaning aggressive. That's what everyone keeps telling me.
Mm.
But given this slate, given what they have, I think it's achievable. A lot can go wrong.
Well, plus when you,
Yeah.
I mean, when
We'll
you
see how it
factor in the
goes.
1-2 punch of not just Pokemon but Smash Brothers as well,
Yep.
Right.
you know,
Right.
that's a hell of a fall in a winter if you ask me. Smash followed by, and they're calling it a core Pokemon game, right? Like, they're calling
They
it
are.
a core RPG.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they're
it's not
calling
like
it a core. They're not calling it a core RPG. They are calling it a core Pokemon game. I
Okay.
think the core RPG Pokemon game is supposed to be coming next year.
that's
That's the 2019
So
one.
it is considered a core Pokemon game, but it is not, like Matt said, it's not a mainline
Do you
Pokemon
think-
game.
do you
So
think-
it's not reinventing anything, because it's supposed to be kind of like a remake of Pokemon Yellow.
So do you guys think they're using the word core to kind of placate the fan base? Like, guys, it's a core game. Note the word core. It is a core game.
Maybe.
It seems like it's like almost like a subliminal, like, calm down. It's a core Pokemon. You're gonna get your Pokemon. One thing I will say,
You're
though,
going to be able to capture Pokemon
Yeah.
and go and train them and everything like that. It's not all about Pokemon Go. So we haven't forgotten you, fans. We love you.
is there gonna be any is there gonna be any synchronicity with the actual Pokemon Go app? Because I've seen a lot of
Yeah,
speculation.
there
about
is.
that. There is. There is. Okay.
Yeah, they demonstrated it in the
Oh, okay. All right. Cool.
in the trailer. Yeah, like they were demonstrating that you could go. I think it was a Dratini or something like that, and like you could go capture it out, walking around your neighborhood, and then you come back and you transfer it to your Switch, and then they join your Pokemon. I'm not
Do you think-
sure in what capacity they join your Pokemon, but they join your Pokemon.
Do you think that's also part of the reason why they cut out wild, like the on the wild Pokemon battles?
Honestly, yeah. That's
Yeah, like
part
they-
of-
like
part of
that's
the
the-
reason why I think they did that.
Right. It's kind of It's so Pokemon's always on your mind. It's not just when you're sitting on your couch with 2 hours to burn.
Because they're forcing you to go out to capture Pokemon.
But
Yeah,
so-
even when you're
And not just grind for them like John wants to.
Yeah.
so
Yeah. It'll
Going outside of your house to play Pokemon is the Dark Souls of Pokemon.
Mhm.
Don't at
just
me.
don't leave your son on the patio while you go and do that.
Yeah,
Oh
but
my
if
god, I
they're
following that
literally
news
cannot
story.
with that.
I can't
Oh, yeah.
believe that. Yeah. Wow. Holy shit.
Whew.
Hey, what's up?
I
To,
just
hey, just
what?
quick shout out to Steve Blomkamp in the chat. Haven't seen you in a while, man.
It's a
Yeah.
Steve.
A
I haven't
wild-
seen Steve in the flesh for like a year.
A wild Steve appears. What's up, my man?
Okay.
Zach, there was one more point I wanted to make about Pokemon, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
And we haven't talked about this. Apparently, and there was some fudging on this, but apparently no online functionality. No.
Oh, there is.
There
is
is.
there?
There
Because
should
it
be.
was-
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was
because
like-
the reporter who reported, they reported that reporter reported it wrong.
They mistranslated it.
Yeah,
first,
they
and then-
are you
mistranslated
sure? Because I thought that was
That
amended. I
happens.
thought that was amended
I
to say
am
no. There's actually
100%.
no online.
I'm 100% sure.
Okay.
It came out as no online first, and then by the time they came out with yes, there actually is online, people were freaking out too much for it to like reach everybody. So
So
Okay.
so I have a question for Matt, if you don't mind, Zach.
Of course.
Matt, in terms of unit sales, like considering the Switch is this is the first core, I'm using that word. This is the first core Pokemon title on a flagship console for Nintendo, and the Switch is their flagship console. This is the first one ever.
Wow, I had not considered that.
So it was that kind of just hit me. I was like, oh shit, this is the first one that's not on a dedicated handheld. Do you have a sales forecast for the actual game itself, like as far as units it'll move?
Yeah. So, all right. So if you assume that by the end of 2018, they have a ballpark of 10 to 12 million Switch out there, maybe a little bit less. You assume, I don't know, what percent of that base is going to pick up a Pokemon? 30%? Is it 35%? Right? So 3 million doesn't seem like it's completely out of the range of possibility. Somewhere between 2 and 4, probably in the U.S.
sounds
Seems
right.
like it's a reasonable target. It's a big number. especially when you extrapolate that to worldwide with a plenty of room for upside if it catches some fire. So, yeah, it's gonna do okay.
I mean, like you said earlier, I mean, it's a Pokemon game. I mean, it's gonna sell a billion. Fuck yeah, it's gonna do just fine.
Nintendo is printing money here, people. Let's make no mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I tell you what, like it's pretty incredible to get what they call a core Pokemon title one year, and then next year comes the real core Pokemon RPG.
The mainline one.
Yeah, that's gonna be, and by that point, the anticipation for that is going to be so high that it's. Yeah, and as somebody who is just now getting into Pokemon, it's a really exciting time, because
I'm so happy for you.
I really enjoy it. I'm really having fun with it. And it gives me something to talk about. And my son, he'll look over my shoulder on my 3DS, and he's like, oh, no, blah, blah, blah. And he's talking about it. And he'll constantly want to come over and say,
my sons too.
Yeah, did you catch another one? What'd you catch now? And I'm like, dude, chill. I got it, man. Like, I know what I'm doing. I've been playing
But Dad, you're capturing them wrong.
Yeah, but
I've heard that.
It makes me cool, Dad, though, that he talks about at school, so that's cool.
Zach,
Zach, sorry,
buy
I'm not trying to
GameCube.
bogart not trying to bogart the mic, man. Sorry.
Yeah. Now you just need to buy a GameCube to play Pokemon Channel, which is the best Pokemon game.
No, I'm sorry. That is a spicy take, but I have a spicier one for you.
Actually, actually, my honest opinion is that Pokemon Snap's the best one, but I have fond memories of Channel.
There, right there.
Was that your spicy take, Amanda?
Snap.
Pokemon Snap was pretty cool.
Yeah, Pokemon
Snap
Snap
is so
kicks
good.
ass.
Just
That's what I really want.
Like, what?
Give
Yeah,
me
like,
AR version of Pokemon Snap.
Yeah, there's
I
so
will.
much potential there.
Yeah, I will not buy that rumored Nintendo 64 Classic unless it has Snap on it.
just please don't ask Jay for any more spicy takes.
No more spicy takes for Jay.
His
Okay.
takes are too spicy.
No,
They are
take some Tums
far
for
too
your spicy takes.
Okay, so before we jump into Fallout 76, Jay, do you want to do one giveaway minute or two?
Yeah.
Another
Yeah,
giveaway.
let me do a giveaway. The next person to win is DOMF.
Oh,
Hell
yeah.
yo!
So,
Okay.
congrats. Yeah, I'm about to hit him up on the Twitter.
Cool.
So, word.
Sounds great. I hope you guys enjoy Minute. It's great. Okay, so the next thing, we're going to jump into Fallout 76. Before I open it up to the group, I actually want to give it to Matt Gregory here, who's been a little bit quiet, but Fallout is his thing. So let's give it to Matt here.
All right, so yeah, this is like kind of a weird one at first, but so there was like a 24-hour live stream that started Tuesday, I think, went into Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just streaming the like please stand by banner, and everybody knew it was Fallout, but there was like a bunch of rumors about, oh, it's a hero shooter, it's this, it's that, and so then they announced Fallout 76 with this little teaser trailer that really doesn't tell us much about what it is, but then Jason Schreier came out on Kotaku and he posted an article citing 3 sources from within Bethesda, saying that it's a multiplayer game. Kind of in the vein of Rust or like DayZ, those survival type games, and it's centered around Vault 76, which we could get from the trailer. So yeah, that's been kind of interesting because it set the fandom off into it's not single player, it's multiplayer based. So it's just been speculation since then.
Nice. And I know we're working on a medium piece that you're writing about what we think might be in there. But before we delve into that and spoil your article, anybody have initial takeaways? Yes. Matty's article will be coming out tomorrow. But does anybody have a takeaway from that trailer, or what they think they're getting, or what they want from this game?
It sounds to me like Fallout 4 multiplayer, or like a co-op for Fallout 4. I mean, the same scenario writer who worked on Fallout 4 is working on this, right?
I think it was the one that worked on Far Harbor.
Was it Far Harbor? I knew it had something to do with Fallout 4.
It's
He's
gonna
the
be like
lead
what,
writer.
more survival based?
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, it sounds cool.
It makes me think that they're like trying to integrate, because there was that survival mode, which was you have to sleep, eat, drink, your ammo has weight, you have to you only save when you sleep. I don't think they'll carry that over. And like damage, it sounds like they're trying to integrate that more smoothly, because it was like kind of a harsh transition switching to that in 4. So it sounds like they're probably going to integrate that stuff more naturally into this.
So we've actually got a question in the chat from Phoenix, you and I. So 76 is the one that opened 20 years after the nuke event, right? Yes, that sounds right.
But this is set 25 years after, it looks like, based on the date on the Pip-Boy.
Oh,
Mhm.
good call. Good call. So I guess my thing is there've been a lot of people who have like reception on this has been very divided, right? Very divided. And I think a lot of that is a lot of people were expecting Fallout 5, which was completely ridiculous in my opinion.
See, I don't think people were expecting Fallout. I think they were expecting a mainline Elder Scrolls or Starfield, which has been rumored forever.
Not with that.
Which-
No, I mean,
Yes,
how would-
that is what I got from that teaser trailer.
But how would you expect Starfield or Elder Scrolls from a teaser trailer that's or from like that image that was
No.
Fallout?
Yeah,
before
no.
that.
I think as soon as people saw the teaser, everyone Fallout, and again, I think a lot of people also were thinking that it was going to be the Switch port that would have been rumored for Fallout 3. I just think if you said a week ago, what do you think Bethesda is going to release this year, people would speculate Starfield or a new Elder Scrolls.
Well, I think we can probably give up on Starfield coming out this year because I don't think they're.
I think we're still years away from Elder Scrolls.
Oh
Yep.
yeah.
If you're,
6?
expecting,
Yeah.
if you're expecting Elder Scrolls 6, like they have
That's
said
like another
multiple
3 or 4
times.
years.
I'll be 45 by the time Elder Scrolls 6 comes out.
Yeah, the new Elder Scrolls, they're not focusing on that right now. They're focusing on ESO.
Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
it sounds like it's not even in development. So
It isn't, not
Right.
as far as I know.
Right.
So here's my question about Fallout 76. And I'd asked this question in our chat DMs. But when they say online functionality, when they talk about co-op, are we talking about something that you can play with one other person? Are we talking about an instanced world where you can see other people running around? Will there be PvP? Will there be, because I feel like an online game without PvP these days, kind of in the age of Battle Royale, which is what we touched on earlier, I feel like people expect that. I don't think games need it, but I feel like people expect it. So when we talk about online functionality and playing with or against other players, what exactly do we think that means?
I think it's going to be small. I think it will be probably 2 to 4 players in one instance.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to know, right? But assuming they're still using that creation engine, which I assume they are, considering the turnaround between this and Fallout 4, they're gonna have to do some serious retooling.
I hope so.
Matty has said this privately in our DMs. Fallout is a game with a lot of stuff in its world, and for that stuff to be consistent across 4 people's world on an engine as old as the creation engine will be a lot. I think people expecting a Rust or DayZ size multiplayer base will probably be disappointed if that's something that they're looking for.
I think the panic is coming from the Rust comparison in that when people picture Rust, they picture a game where you go in, there's like 50 other people, you build a base, and then when you log off, that base is persistent, and that base can be taken down when you're offline. And like that's what I've been seeing people freaking out about, which
Yeah.
that would not
It's
work
very
in this
EVE
game.
Online.
Yeah, that would not work in this game because from what Jason said, there's a story, there's quests, and like that progressing a narrative in that type of game would be like pushing a rock uphill and then like, oh, I'm logging off, and then it just rolls back to the bottom. So
Right.
Yep.
What I honestly, part of what then this again, we're speculating right here, and of course my journalism hat is on right now, so don't hold me to any of this because I won't know until the Bethesda event. But I'm thinking that this might be something very similar to what they're doing with State of Decay.
Interesting.
That honestly, that plus a bit more in terms of base building and customization would make for a really interesting Fallout experience for me personally, because honestly, I am a very, very old, don't let the face fool you. I am a very, very old school Fallout player. I adored Fallout 1 and 2. I really did.
I'd love to see
And
a return of
those are the kinds of games that I am missing, those traditional top-down, classic RPGs. Like, I'm missing that.
Can you imagine those on Switch, Amanda?
God, I can't stop imagining it, John.
You can't humor John's Switch port begging. He cannot
I
stop.
can because I fully support him. He's living his best life.
Finally.
So John knows. He knows. I have a deep, unhealthy love for these kinds of games.
Someone gets me.
So that's kind of what I'm thinking. That would make me want to play a Fallout game again because I'm tired of the first-person shooter, open world. I don't know where to go next, and it's really overwhelming me. And I want to love this game, but I can't get into it. So this is that kind of a game, though. They give me something that I can really sink my teeth into, similar to State of Decay, I can get into that.
Yeah, similarly, I put this in our and I feel like a State of Decay defender because I really like the second game. But
I haven't played it yet.
Game Pass, it's pretty low standard. It's a pretty low risk thing. But I like State of Decay 2 a lot, and State of Decay 2 expands on some of that base building stuff that I think was lackluster in Fallout 4. Like I never felt truly compelled to really build out my base. I know there are a lot of really, really smart, creative people that love building huge settlements in Fallout 4, but I never felt a gameplay drive to really do that. And State of Decay was a game where a lot of your building was custom and it suited your play style. And so I think that if we can kind of get some of that State of Decay base stuff that's driven by how you want to play, whether you're an aggressive player or a defensive player, or you just want to hoard as many supplies as possible, I think that would be a compelling thing. I mean, obviously, we're just 2 weeks away from really knowing more.
Well, yeah, I feel like this is going to be the culmination of
less than 2 weeks.
What they started in Hearthfire in Skyrim, which was, you build a house, you got that, and then they kind of evolved that with the settlement system.
That could
And
be interesting.
The settlement system was like, people didn't really touch that because they saw it as optional content. So I think making that the core, if this is the core of this game, which based on the narration in the trailer, they say, when the fighting has stopped, when the fallout has settled, you must rebuild.
Oh no, Matt has hot takes. I can see it in his eyes.
He does.
Uh-oh.
That just sounds like the most boring thing I could ever think about.
I actually had a question for Matt. I don't know
Come
how
back,
many,
Matt.
I don't really know what numbers you have on this kind of stuff, but I know Conan Exiles, Ark, Rust, Daisy have all sold really well, and those are those started in early access. Do you think a AAA game releasing complete with this kind of stuff is going to do really well?
So you've got great brand, great studio track record. You have a very dedicated fan base that I think will buy the game no matter what. And it's a question of how good is it and how does it evolve over time. So I think the potential is absolutely there for it to do extremely well and maybe better than mainline Fallout games if they can get a big enough audience. But the question is always going to be how does the service element go? How do they evolve it over time? And that'll be truly interesting. But it is like a lot of things this year, the first time something like this is happening, so we're gonna have to learn a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And one of the leaks that I think remember, leaks don't have any confirmation, right? And like Amanda said, we are 9-10 days away from the actual reveal. But one of the leaks around this game that had a lot of other details correct mentioned that this game will not support mods. Which I think is especially huge on PC, less so on console. And we've seen in the past when 2 or 3 years ago when Bethesda and Steam were going to monetize some mods early on before the curation system from Bethesda, that could, if that rumor ends up being true, I think that can hurt their base pretty significantly on PC.
I mean, it's an online co-op game, so I mean, I don't think it's shocking there's no mods.
I agree. I just think that the PC community can be kind of knee-jerk about that kind of community.
Anything.
Yeah.
Yes, anything. They can be kind of knee-jerk. So we'll see, right? I can see that. I mean, things on Steam tend to spiral. As we've seen a couple times. But we'll see. We'll see. Again, I shouldn't speculate on that because it's all up in the air and we'll know more very soon.
So I feel like there's something else about Fallout 76 that we haven't really touched on, and the fact that we are going to see a new type of Fallout, not just from a gameplay perspective, but from a setting perspective, because this is set relatively soon after all the bombs dropped. So this is going to be a much more brutal, barbaric world, I think, than we're used to in a Fallout game, because by the time we played most of the Fallout games, Fallout 3, Fallout 4, I mean, we're hundreds of years in the future now. Things have settled, civilizations have started to rebuild in whatever manner they can. But in this, I mean, you're 25-something years after the bombs dropped, after the vaults reopened, so the land is still heavily irradiated. There are no settlements left, which, of course, that's kind of the crux of the whole gameplay. It's time to rebuild everything. So my question is one, if we're gonna get a story, which I believe we are, I believe it's still gonna have a mainline story to this game. are the themes going to be darker? Is it going to be more dog eat dog? Are we going to see less of that humor than we're used to from a Fallout game? And two, are there going to be creatures like super mutants, for example? Have they had enough time to to cook in the radiation that long? I mean, I think these are all questions that I mean, clearly we don't have answers to, but I think there's a huge opportunity here for Bethesda to really give us a slice of that world that we're not used to seeing, and to deliver a different kind of Fallout experience than we're used to. I hope they do. I would love a more brutal Fallout setting.
I think there will be things like super mutants, because if you look at the timeline, like the East Coast super mutants, they're separate from the ones on the West Coast, and they came from DC, like Vault 87. I think it was like 10 years before this takes place. The FEV virus like mutated them and stuff, and then they broke out. So like I think they're going to be around. I feel like if you look at the timeline, there's going to be settlements, because people were leaving vaults like 10, 15 years before this takes place.
Were they? Okay.
But they're going to be very basic and small. So like that'll fit
wilder,
the
I think.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think it'll be much more Mad Max than, and not suggesting vehicles, but I just mean like how the people will interact then like, because if you think about Fallout 4, right, there's even raiders, there's kind of a hierarchy and kind of what feels like a raider government in a lot of the factions that you interact with. I don't think you'll see that with this.
Well, and I think one other thing you'll see with the characters is that they'll remember the old world, unlike the characters in 3 and 4. Like they have no conception of what happened before, other than like artifacts they've seen. So these are going to be people who were like police officers and doctors and stuff.
I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that at all. Wow. And presumably this year, but we'll see. Again, we're just a short time away. From that. But yeah, does anybody else have a take for Fallout?
I actually, you know what? I just had a comment about Fallout.
Okay.
And it relates to kind of the season itself. In September, I mean, I think we can all probably agree this is coming out late October. I think that's the time frame that everybody's talking about. So
Yep.
In September you've got Smash. In October you've got Red Dead Redemption 2 and Fallout 76 and Call of Duty at the end of the month, right? That's an October game this year. In November you've got Pokemon. Is there room, and I guess this is a question mostly for Matt, but for everybody really, is there room for anything else? I mean, because I feel like pitting anything else against this kind of a lineup is insanity.
It's a hell of a lineup. That's for damn sure.
I'm afraid of games falling into the trap that Rise of the Tomb Raider did when it launched right on top of Fallout 4.
Ooh, Shadow's lucky they're in September this year.
Yep.
Oh, it's okay. So I thought that was a November or an October game.
No, I think it's September.
It's September 14th. Yeah, and don't get it twisted. Bethesda will still send some products out to die this fall. I think that we will see Evil Within DLC. I think we will see Prey DLC. We'll definitely see more Prey. They've been teasing it pretty heavily.
Yeah.
Yep.
I wonder.
Yeah, so we will see some of that. Yeah,
and didn't they tease Evil Within DLC on their Twitter account as well?
A little bit less so than what we've seen with Prey. So that could be next year, but I would be shocked if we don't get more Prey this year at the very least.
Which I would love, because I love Evil Within 2. It is a very underrated horror game. Yeah, it's a good game, Brent. Zach, I had a question. So we've got about 30 minutes left.
Ooh, can I make a comment about Fallout really quick?
Yes, Jay.
Okay, cool. I don't really care about Fallout. I like Elder Scrolls games. I don't like the aesthetic of Fallout games, so I'm just not a huge fan. But I have to give props to Bethesda for the rollout of the announcement of this. It got everyone talking. Like, it was really good marketing. So shout out to Bethesda.
Well, Matt had even mentioned in chat. He said 2 million people watching a stream of nothing for a whole day was a better reaction than they could have. And you know what it reminds me of?
So much trolling.
Yeah. And like the thing to me, it's like, like people were expecting to be like Starfield or Elder Scrolls 6, which I don't think we're gonna see that game forever. But it goes to show that like that's not like their big news drop for E3. Like there's something bigger coming to E3, Go ahead,
Jay. I didn't mean to cut you off, man. Sorry, you were cutting in and out. I thought you were talking.
Oh no, you're fine. Sorry. Like I was probably moving in and out from my mic. But I mean, just like the way they rolled out the Fallout 76 like announcement, it just goes to show that like like this is not their big game. Like as a game that's coming out, but it's not like their big game.
I think it might be though.
I
'cause
think
they
it might
rolled
be
out
too.
Fallout 4. They rolled out
Yeah.
Fallout 4 at the exact same
Really?
time. This
Yeah.
before E3. In
Okay,
2014.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they did it. I think they did it. Yeah, like basically a week before they showed the trailer.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing. I now we don't need to totally retread old news. I don't know if we would have seen them announce Rage 2 if it hadn't been leaked a couple weeks ago.
They said they were pretty close to announcing it. It only threw off their plans by
But
like
I mean,
a couple
talking
of weeks,
about
I think.
talk about taking a crappy situation and just making the best out of it. Yeah, I mean, props. To
Or
that
making it
marketing
worse
team.
for all the publishers who weren't involved.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
But like you know what the Fallout. This is the last thing I'll say about Fallout. You know what the Fallout situation reminded me of? People watching that stream. Matt said it, and it made. Who here's seen the Truman Show? Anybody seen the Truman Show? It reminded me of a part in the Truman Show where they went offline. They pulled the plug, and they just had a graphic of Jim Carrey's face on there saying, "Technical difficulties. We'll be right back." And the producer's like, he's like, "We got to fix the situation." And the guy who runs the show is like, "Why? We're getting higher ratings with this graphic than we ever have with Truman himself." And just what Matt said in the chat really made me think of that. I mean, there were so many people watching for 24 hours, like with bated breath, like a fucking bobblehead laying down in front of a television screen. Even
the anticipation is greater than
I kept like refreshing it. I'd poke it every hour. I'm like, anything happened? No, it's just that fucking bobblehead again.
The funny thing is that people were watching at like 2, 3 a.m. Like, man, they're wasting my time. And I was like, they did the same thing with Fallout 4. It was a 24-hour stream. Just wait until 11 o'clock. But people were like watching it, like second to second.
Yeah.
So weird.
So
yeah,
I had a question for Zach. We've had a few people in the chat, and also this is for Amanda as well. We've had a few people in the chat ask if we're going to address Battlefield 5.
Oh boy.
Is that something?
Before we do that, we're gonna do our last code giveaway for Minute. But yes, we will get to Battlefield 5 if everyone else has time.
Well, also if Amanda's comfortable talking about it.
We can talk about it. I don't have a ton of extra time, so we'll have to. I can do probably another 10-15 minutes. I'm not gonna go super hard and heavy into the feminist portion, but I do want to talk about a lot to do with Battlefield 5.
Okay.
Great.
Cool. Our last winner of Minute for Steam, the game that involves you playing segments for 60 seconds, is
Failing up.
Yeah, failing up. Yeah. Is Julian, which is I can't pronounce his handle. It's Kazaku. Kazaku. Yeah. So congratulations. I will DM you the code and all that.
Awesome.
And that's all the codes because one of the codes did not work. It was a duplicate code. So
I might have a code laying around. So next episode maybe we'll have something to give around.
Cool.
But yeah, so Battlefield 5, this is a little bit old news. It was last week, but we had to cancel because so many of us were a little bit busy. So yeah, Battlefield 5 had a reveal. It was a trailer that I think got a mixed reaction for a lot of different reasons.
Boy, oh boy.
One of which was there are women in it, and people don't like that, I guess.
There's a woman on the cover. Oh,
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
And you have to pay extra to
I mean,
get
it's
the
a
dude.
very, very stylized take on World War II.
Yeah, but yeah.
So
I mean, it's hard to pick where to begin.
It's as accurate as like fucking Crimson Skies was trying to be to World War One. Like it's.
Crimson Skies was so good.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
Absolutely.
It's a damn good game, man.
Yeah.
So like
Fuck historical accuracy. Give me Crimson Skies.
I
Yeah.
tweeted, some idiot on Twitter was like, women. And I tweeted out, I quoted his tweet, and I said, but what about this Russian sniper who had 309 confirmed kills in World War II, and she's considered to be one of the deadliest snipers in military history, and eventually got like 16,000 likes and like 1,000 retweets, and I've still got people in my DMs saying, you cook. And I'm like, okay. But like, I don't get the, at the end of the day, like it's a fucking video game. I mean, like, it's like, don't come into this expecting an AP history class. That's not what it is. It's a video game. Like
It's entertainment.
Who gives a shit? Like, I mean, did you have a problem with Inglorious Bastards? I mean, did you have a problem?
No, it was a fantastic movie.
I mean, I don't like, even if, and here's what gets me. Even if you're not a fan of the stylized take in World War II, that's your right. Who fucking cares? It's not. Don't buy the game. Like, it's not affecting your life at all. It's not changing your life. It doesn't have a detrimental effect on how you run your day to day. And if it does, then you need to have a serious look in the mirror and ask yourself, have a very serious conversation with yourself. I just, and the game looks fine. It looks fine.
It's gonna sell fine.
It's gonna sell millions
it's
of
not
copies.
really it's not really a controversy because people are
Yeah.
gonna buy it. They've already decided what the game is gonna be, and people are still gonna buy it, and so
World War
That's it.
II has been like presented in this kind of mythic way for decades. Like it's nothing new. I don't know why. Like, well, we know why people are acting like it's new, but
What,
I mean, and like one of the things that I find the most frustrating is that this community doesn't give a shit about historical accuracy, and that's fine. It's fine, but it's a game where you can get shot in the face, revived, run around, kill a guy, and then get blown up with a grenade and be revived again. Like you don't care. You don't care about realism. It's fine. I don't either. It's fun. Why do we need to get into like? But
I think-
there's a woman over there, and she also has a prosthetic arm, and like
a lack of realism is only as much of a problem as the game is trying to make it. Because if the game
Right.
is trying to be really serious, then any inconsistencies stand out as massive flaws. But if it's going for a very fantastical atmosphere, then it's only a flaw if they if there's not like the
Yeah.
coherence.
Well, and like I think one of my favorite moments about that, I think it was Eric Pope who shared that GIF. He was like, I can't believe how unrealistic Battlefield 1 was, and it's got that like those three people like standing up
So
on a
good.
horse while it was galloping.
It was
like-
Milbo, Dave Milner.
Okay. Oh, it was Milner. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
On he's Bob Workman's guy. He podcasts with Robert Workman, right?
No.
I thought he did.
David Milner is the editor-in-chief of Game Informer Australia.
Game Informer Australia. Okay,
so
right.
close,
Yeah.
John. So close.
Yeah,
That's okay. Milner is my secret sweetheart,
Ooh.
but not really.
But
He has a baby, and this baby's so cute. His life is adorable. I just like to, watch his tweets and watch him be adorable.
I just
And we're meeting for ramen at E3, so really that's all I care about.
Oh, God, all you people who are going to E3, I should have gone to E3.
I'm sorry that you're not coming with us, honey.
Yeah.
I should have gone. But now I'm full of regret for not going.
FOMO.
But I know, right? But I don't know. Like we don't have to
But,
get too deep in the weeds on it. But it really bothered me on a personal level because I've actually been to war. I've been to combat. I've seen combat. I've been there, and this idea that you should be bothered by a woman in combat. I don't care what the historical setting is. Just really, really bothers me.
So let me weigh in for a moment. Just for a
Absolutely.
moment. So this beckons a broader conversation, right? This comes down to the deep divide between the gaming industry and the gaming community 20 years ago
Yep.
versus what it looks like now. When I was a teenager, back in, the early aughts, God, I was the only girl who played video games. The only one that I knew. The only one in my community, the only one in my neighborhood, the only one in my school. Either in elementary school or in high school. I was pretty much the only girl that played games. And I remember the boys growing up saying, God, I wish more girls played games. I wish that I could play as a girl more often in a game. Why is it only Lara? Why is it, because we hadn't gotten to Beyond Good and Evil yet. And we hadn't gotten to this, fantastic plethora of amazing female protagonists in games yet, because we just hadn't gotten there as an industry. We hadn't gotten there as a society, really, where it's not necessarily about identity politics. It's about people like playing their own representations and avatars in games. It creates better immersion for a lot of people. I can play as a dude. I'm playing an embargoed game right now where I'm playing as a dude. I adore him. I think he's wonderful. And I don't have any problems playing as a guy. But I grew up in a gaming, adverse sort of neighborhood where I just played with boys all the time, and there was never any problems. They didn't think I was less because I was a female gamer. They didn't think I was less because, I valued different things in video games than they did. It was just about, you are literally the only girl we know who plays video games, and this is basically the coolest thing ever. Can you please be our best friend for life? And we look at that versus now, and how almost 20 years has completely eroded the landscape. so that we've been here all along. We women gamers have been here all along. We grew up as gamers. In fact, those women gamers that are in their late 30s, early 40s, we've been around for a long ass time. So seeing a female soldier in a Battlefield game who is, I believe, only like in multiplayer. I don't even know if that like she's available to play in the campaign.
I think she actually is in the campaign.
The campaign, they did say that, so they're gonna have a story mode again. One of the people they're going to focus on, the vignette will focus on a Swedish resistance fighter who happens to be a woman. Yeah.
And I loved the vignettes in Battlefield 1, by the way.
They were good.
I thought they were
Yeah.
so cool.
That's
I
the
haven't
character
finished
with the
playing
hook
all
on.
of them yet, but I really liked them. So the pushback on that is that these young men, and they know that their views are unfashionable now.
Mm-hmm.
They know that they are either going to have to get with the times, or they're going to have to, I don't know, just play old games to get what they need. To go play old God of War, I guess, and go have sex with Aphrodite.
Zeus!
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Shake your fist at Zeus. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I like those old games, but I also think that there's room for better storytelling, for deeper nuance, for more interesting characters. If we're going to do something that's stylized in the vein of World War II, why can't we do that? Why is that something that is outside the realm of possibility? If it is one thing if they are selling it as historical realism. If they're selling it as a historical shooter, that's not necessarily the same thing. That means that the setting is historical. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything about it has to be totally accurate. That's just hiding behind something that you already wouldn't believe in, even if it was historically accurate. And they can say that they're not for it because, you know, she's Swedish and she's not Russian.
But there were Swedish resistance fighters though who were female. That's the thing, right? Like, and that's where you got to separate film from games. I am a history buff, and I study war. I've studied war my entire career, and there were Polish female fighters who were female. There were Swedish resistance fighters who were female. Mostly Poles and Swedes, and you know, if had you know, women been storming the beaches at Normandy in Saving Private Ryan, I'd have been like, that's historically inaccurate. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense because there were no women there. This is something that's not only is it a fucking video game, but it's based on.
Tell me again, John.
It's a fucking video game, Amanda, and it's based on historical. It's historically accurate to say that there were female European resistance fighters in World War II. That's exactly what they were. So I believe you. You know, anybody arguing about this is just simply, you know, I mean. You made a good point about females in gaming, right? Like 49% of gamers are female. That's a stat. That's a fact. 49%.
47 as of last year.
Okay, so 47%.
Yeah, there was a significant dip since 2014. I'm not going to talk about the reason for that dip because I don't actually know, and it would be pure speculation, and I'm a responsible game journalist. However, I will show you the data, and you can draw your own fucking conclusions.
Honestly, I'm going to buy the game because of the controversy, just to say, yeah.
We've seen this kind of. I mean, even this year we've seen like this controversy from conservative, presumably white, definitely men who just don't like anything that doesn't cater to their exact beliefs, right? Like, I mean, a game like BattleTech, which is a niche PC game, got a lot of flack for doing they/them pronouns, which was
really
ridiculous.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it did. Really
huge
quick.
flack.
Yeah. Oh yeah, huge flack. And then like it is a tabletop classic niche game that for right now is a PC only game. But yeah, Kickstarter funders were throwing a fit about it. Really quick before we kind of continue this conversation and then wrap up, Amanda did say she has to duck out. So Amanda, thank you so much for being here tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys. I'm glad that you guys held on to the Battlefield 5 comment for me. I'm glad that I could add something to it that was useful.
Well, we wanted you to be able to speak on it a little bit here, so.
Of course.
All right, my dears.
Bye, Amanda.
Yeah, have a good one.
Yep.
It was nice to meet you, Matt.
Yeah.
Bye.
You too. See you later.
All of them.
It doesn't
But
matter.
yeah,
Both
so-
of you. Your
So
math's
really
right.
quick, Matt, I don't know if you've got anything on this from an NPD perspective. How do you feel about this game? It's launching in October, 1 week after Black Ops, another week before Red Dead Redemption 2. There's also the thing where they're charging $20 more if you are a piece of shit who only wants the mail cover. Do you have a take?
Ultimately, this whole thing won't make a significant difference to the sales number. I think it's abhorrent what parts of the gaming community have done with this issue. It's awful and terrible that the exclusionary nature of the comments and how people are approaching this, or some people are approaching this. I'm also very encouraged by what a whole bunch of folks are doing to support inclusion in the gaming community. Ultimately, if the game's great, it's going to sell. If the game's not great, it won't. And that'll be that. And hopefully we can move forward in a positive way, because this is dumb. This is a bad way for our community to go
So
right
dumb.
now.
It's so
Yep.
fucking dumb. Oh my god.
I'm really glad DICE is doing stuff like this though, because they faced very similar backlash with Battlefield 1 when there was an African American soldier on the cover
Yeah.
who was a Harlem Hellfighter, and it seems like that did not phase them at all.
Which
Like,
is so historically fucking accurate, by the way. I mean,
Yep.
and wasn't there a Medal of Honor game back on the PlayStation with the fucking woman on the cover?
Yeah.
Yep.
It was one of the spinoffs.
Yeah,
Medal of Honor Underground. It was
Underground.
actually,
Yeah,
It was the
Mhm.
second one in the series.
like I don't remember.
It was
the-
before, yeah. It was before the internet and white men decided they were super oppressed. Apparently,
I remember the review for that in the official PlayStation magazine. It was like the most obscure thing ever. They're like, yeah, like this game sounds really good with like 5.1 surround sound system. It's like, dude, you can't afford that in 2000. Sorry, I had to point that out.
No, you're good, man.
so Matt, you still think as long as the game is well made, we'll see it sell well. Obviously, games that I mean, I think the consensus is that Titanfall 2 is a great game that just got nuked by its release schedule. You don't think we're gonna have that same problem with something like Battlefield that's kind of a staple now?
I mean, you always have variability to how a game's going to sell. The game ranking score is not going to tell you everything. In fact, the quality score only explains about a little less than 30% of the variability in sales. So you have a whole bunch of other stuff that'll impact that. So I don't know. Ultimately, if they can capture an audience, they'll do great, and this controversy will hopefully become something that's we look back in the past and move forward from. I don't know how to use what's going on now as a sales extrapolator. It's I don't really think it matters when it comes to that.
Okay, that sounds
I could
good.
be totally wrong. Who knows? I don't know.
I mean,
Okay.
Matt made a good point about variability, right? Like, last year we didn't have, or when Titanfall 2 launched, or we didn't have a Red Dead Redemption 2, or like a Pokemon, or a Fallout game, I think Matt makes a really good point with variability, right? Like, if those games weren't releasing, or if fewer of them were releasing, I think Battlefield would have a better chance. I don't think it's going to sell as well as some people think it does, personally. But which is unfortunate, but that's just my opinion. It's just kind of a feeling I have in my gut.
Yeah, it's always trailed Call of Duty. It's always been the second title. So you have those titles, plus you have some other big gorillas in the room.
Oh, like Odyssey, shit. Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Yeah, a little bit different genre. I don't know how much it. It's really tough to try to quantify the impact of competitive release schedules. Generally, if a game is on the same day as you, it's a problem. But if a game is a week apart, it generally isn't. But sometimes it is, right? And so it's one of those things where we just kind of let things fall out. I still expect it to be a top 10 selling game in its launch month. They generally always are. But how big of a part of the market is going to capture? We still haven't seen a holiday period where Battle Royale is a major part of the shooter market. Will Fortnite, PUBG, and the 20 other Battle Royale games coming in Q4 just kind of impact that military traditional shooter market in ways we're not thinking about? So I mean, there's so many things that could happen.
So-
tough to pin out.
So one last thing before we wrap, Matt. I know in the past you've said you think Battle Royale, and you touched on it, will be huge at E3. Are you sticking with that? Is that still going to be a Goliath this year?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really gross, and we're all going to get tired of it. This industry does this, though, right? Whether it's plastic guitars, or it's MMOs, or it's MOBAs, or VR a couple years ago. This is an industry that chases trends more than most, so we're going to see a lot of that. And then, as always is the case, 2 or 3 will break away and be huge successes, and people will lose a lot of money on the rest of them. But, we'll see how it goes.
Do you think Fortnite and PUBG will continue to be like the new Minecraft, or do you think they will go the way eventually of the plastic guitars and the congas and all that other stuff?
Well, that's the big question, right? So first, the first established players generally are the ones standing at the end. Sometimes that's not true, but for the most part, these big trends things, that tends to be the way it goes. And the big question everyone's asking right now is Battle Royale a new genre, or is it a fad? Is it a 3 years up, 2 years down and gone, or is it 2 or 3 years up and then maintaining? Right? Is it Guitar Hero or is it Minecraft, which are two very different sales curves? Who knows?
I was on Reddit Xbox One today because I was trying to kill time at work, and there's this article from PCGamesN.com that said that PUBG's player count has halved since January.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still high as fuck. Half.
That's still that is still high as fuck.
That drop is significant, obviously.
Yes, it is it's quite a big drop.
Yeah, we'll see.
Does that settle in as the number 2 game? Like, do the other Battle Royale games coming, do they even capture a foothold? Or is Fortnite so big that it captures the entire thing? Like, that's the big question.
Right. Well, we'll see. We're just 10 days away from E3, 9 days away from E3 now. And so again, I guess we'll start heading towards the end of the show here. Matt, I think that you'll be at E3, so maybe we'll catch you there. Similarly, myself, Jay, and Finn, who is not on site, will be there. We have a ton of coverage planned, both in person on the floor, but of course the crew who won't be at E3 will be doing, I think, coverage of the shows live.
Yeah,
like we've done in the past.
We're going to be streaming the conferences with Wout, our good buddy, #Agonist.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Okay.
And, Zach, before we wrap up real quick, can I remind everybody that the week after E3, Mike Huber from Easy Allies will be on to do kind of a post E3
Great.
Us, so.
Sounds great. Sounds like
Cool.
a busy week for everybody, but it'll be a great time. Okay. Well, again, everybody, thanks for being here.
Zach, one more thing.
Yes.
I'm sorry. One more thing.
No.
Our secret Sony guest was not able to come on tonight, obviously, but he should be dropping into the podcast next week. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but
Cool.
He is a developer for Sony. That's all I'm going to tell you. That's
Cool.
all I'm going to say.
Cool. And
Cool.
just be on the lookout for Matty's article on Medium tomorrow. I will be posting it on the podcast Twitter. So
And now we can let Zach wrap up.
Okay. Well, again, one last thank you to Matt from MPD Group for coming out and hanging out with us again. Always grateful for your insight. We really appreciate it, man.
Cool. Thanks for having me again.
Of course. All right, guys. It's not always poetry, and we don't always agree, but we all keep it real. Take it easy, guys.
Hey, you got it.
He got it.
I got it.
you got it.